Something that I highlighted multiple times in my ultimate guide to Serum 2 because I was just really excited about it is the audio rate modulation. And specifically the fact that it was implemented very accurately and therefore sounds actually very nice. So today I want to show you what it is capable of and how you can include it in your own sound design. Now before we really get into it, I do want to show you a quick sound example, and I want to say that I'm going to get this preset and put it on my premium part of my Discord. So if you're a YouTube member, a Patreon or a Twitch subscriber, you're going to have access to that. But with that being said, let's get into the sound example and then the tutorial. So imagine that we have this situation over here, we have this initialized patch, and we want to modulate a parameter really fast. Say that we want to go into the LFO here, and we have this, we can set it up to 100 Hz, or even to 1000 Hz if we click the timestamp. So let's say that the parameter that we want to modulate is the sync here, and we're just going to assign it. Let's start very low to hear what it does. As you can hear, we get some really cool variations. Some of them have really strong drifting, others are more like a stable tone. And as you can see, this is still a very interesting sound design technique, the way that we're doing it right now, but it isn't really very versatile. For one, the key information gets a little bit messed up if I play different melodies. We don't get the same tonality, and it's not always in the exact key that you want and stuff like that. Sometimes that can happen more with when you're modulating, for example, the pitch. But really what we would like to have is maybe have this speed adapt to the note or something like that. But then we need to set up complex modulations, and then we cannot get to certain notes because it goes above the rate that we can set over here. So what we would essentially want is to be able to get rid of this LFO entirely and use something else for the fast modulation. And that is where the other oscillators come in, because you can now use them as a modulation source. So I'm just going to set this to a sine wave. Or we can even set a triangle wave, which is the exact wave that we have over here, because then it's going to be an even better example. And let's just disable this modulation and then drag the oscillator right in there. And now you can hear we can get some really nice stable tones out of it. One of the interesting things that you can always do is right click here, change the mode to ratio, and then set your tone here. If you want a little bit of drifting, you can do it, for example, like this. And in this mode, always make sure that you're linking it to here. So if you make any pitch changes over here, this is always going to follow. This is cool if you're doing, for example, pitch bends or modulation on this coarse pitch here. As you can see now, all of the modulation stuff is just going to follow. Now let's say that we like this sound and we are going to send it through the filter. I am going to make it stable at a ratio of 0.5 exactly. And we're just going to push this through the filter here. Let's go a few octaves lower. That's cool. Let's maybe turn this into a bandpass for now. And what I would like to do is for this bandpass to really quickly move up and down the frequency spectrum. And again, we can use oscillator B for that. One of the things that we have now is that we have some phase randomization. That is why we get the variation. If you don't want that, you set this all the way down. And then of course, the phase offset is going to determine your tonality, the phase offset between these two. We're already almost getting like a talkative nature to there, somewhere in the mid-range. But now one of the most interesting things that we can do is we can use the output of filter 1 to go and modulate stuff in the oscillator. What that means is that we have the oscillator going to the filter and then the filter going to the oscillator. And that means that they're going to be like in this kind of harmony of dependence on each other. in the sense that one is going to affect the other, which is in turn going to affect the one, and then the other, and the one, and the other, and the one. And that can sometimes cause some really cool kind of cascading sound design ideas. So let's just add, for example, a band plus here, and let's set up the filter. Are already getting some cool sounds, but let's maybe involve a sync as well with a bit of a window. We're already getting some very cool tones out of this, and now when we've already set up the kind of more complex modulation between each other, what is cool is going back into some of the older parameters and making some changes, specifically maybe here to the pitch. I'm going to give this 2 voices of unison, just so that we have a little bit of stereo with and it becomes a bit more interesting. And then another thing that we could do is, instead of just using it for modulation, let's also include a little bit of phase distortion from this. Maybe just going in here and lowering this modulation amount a little bit. Already getting some cool sounds there. Let's maybe add a little bit of extra strength to it with including a third oscillator. Maybe here we also do a little bit of phase distortion, but in this case from A. And as you can hear, we're already getting some very cool FM tones out of that. Now, what I would like to show you here is how to turn that into maybe a little bit of a sequence. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to include filter 2 by setting that to the diffuser, and then just setting the stages all the way up and the filter cutoff a little bit lower. We have to, of course, make sure that this actually goes to filter 2. I was like, why is there no phase shift happening? But there we are. Now what I want to do is just add a delay and a little bit of reverb. On this one, I'm going to go with a fairly small reverb here, a lot of damping and a lower mix. And I'm just going to get my classic dotted 8 ping pong here. And finally, I'm going to remove some of the lower frequencies that I don't want. So what I've quickly done is just set up a rhythmizer as well as a MIDI controller here. And I've just added a little bit of a clip so that we can play the sequence so that you can hear what it sounds like. And as you can hear, that is just in general a very, very cool sound. So as you can see, this modulation using the oscillators is a very, very potent trick. There's definitely some more interesting tonalities that you can get out of it than just your standard kind of FM tonalities. And honestly, I cannot wait to see what kind of crazy sound design techniques everybody can come up with. Keep in mind that today we have restricted ourselves to the wavetable, but that doesn't necessarily have to be the case. You can use these kind of modulations with any of these oscillators. So one thing that would be really cool to experiment with is creating a sound font of all different kind of modulators for FM, and then using that to kind of switch between FM tonalities. And I'm certain there's many more different ideas that you can come up with now that you know about this trick. So let me know if you have one by leaving them in the comments down below. And while you're there, make sure that you're subscribed to the channel and that you like this video. Another way to support the channel is to become a member or a Patreon or Twitch subscriber. All three of these will give you many different benefits, so thank you if you do that. and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye bye.